It's incredibly great to be here, both with all of you. I've had some fabulous conversations today, and I am thrilled to be on the panel with the folks who are sitting here, who I've also learned from today. I'm incredibly excited that the junior doctors have begun to take on a very vicious government that you have, and that's heartening news, because I think, as Ethel said, and I said when I spoke, and we're all sort of echoing the same thing, the fight is on. The fight's been on for a long time. So I just want to make a couple of comments, really. I just had almost an hour to talk, and there's this little red book circulating that will be in the pub for sale, where I talk for about, the equivalent of, I don't know how many hours that would be straight, but 300 pages worth. So I just want to say a couple of quick things here on the panel. The first is, I'm cautious about both the slides I saw this morning about what public polling is on the NHS and public polling on a bunch of individual things, because I come from the land of Madison Avenue, in the US, where, by the way, most people in our country now think that corporations are more trustworthy than government, that the private sector is better than the public sector, and that Donald Trump has a brain, apparently. So the erosion of the services that they've already begun here, it's a slippery slope. And in our case, it went very quickly. It wasn't a one-year campaign or 2 years. Our opposition has long vision. They launched in 1973 in the US, and I won't get into the whole story now because I don't have time, but they really launched in 1973. And they said then, in documents we have, that it would take them about 40 years to roll back the US, and they're about on target. So I know that there's still majorities showing that they support the NHS in this country, but here's what they did in the US. They bled our public services so dry through austerity for so long, until they got people to the point where when you walked into the Postal Service, that was as good as any postal service in the world, not better. I'd never say anything in the US is better, except our ability to bust unions. We're number one at union busting. But they bled, for example, our postal service. They cut the staff, and cut the staff, and cut the staff, till everyone said, I want FedEx, a private service. Because going into the post office meant you used to stand and wait for 5 minutes to get some stamps in your package. And now you wait for an hour and a half to send a package. That is a blistering attack on government, which actually does flip the public view of what public services means. They're diabolical. They're diabolical. They're not coming at the health services for 1 year or one budget or 1 second. They're coming to take the whole thing. When Tony Blair did an experiment of 6% privatization of your NHS, which I knew very acutely, because a hospital corporation that I just showed a bunch of slides about in my presentation, where we took workers, nurses out on their first strike ever, a private sector hospital corporation named UHS, one of the biggest union busters in the entire world, got part of the 6% privatization experiment of your NHS. Let me tell you something. These people are union busters beyond recognition. And that's what's sort of coming here. Unless UNISON, through days like this, is able to very quickly rebuild, and I believe you are, to rebuild the kind of worksite power that you need and the kind of really broad support in the community that's possible. You still have public support here. It's not enough that we poll it. We have to go engage them. And we have to engage them because they're our neighbors and our friends and our next door neighbors, and they're all of us, right? So we need to build really strong worksite structures, and we actually need to build really strong community support structures in the broader community. We can't rely on polls. We have to engage them. I want to just raise a couple of points and then stop. One is the question that Kevin Nelson asked this morning. I've been stuck on all day, and I hope you're stuck on for a long time, which is, does anyone want to look back and say that we could have organized better at this moment than we did? I think it's the exact right question to be asking. Today's skill session is the answer to that question. There's never enough full-time union officials anywhere on planet Earth, and you're all extremely capable, as I believe all workers are. If we go to work and we get work done, and we raise kids in our family, which I think unwaged work at home is often very skillful work too, by the way, we're very capable people, the working class. And the quicker we learn that there are some skills, whether it's what's our narrative, how do we talk to the message, how do we tell our story very effectively from the heart to the media, and not have a bunch of suits telling the story about industrial action, right, versus a person talking about the care that they couldn't deliver. There's a lot of actually effective skills, and this region in UNISON is really trying to move out the skill set. And the pamphlet that you have in your bags today about the 10 ways to build an effective work site is really good and worth a lot of your attention. So I think you should stick on the question that was posed this morning. I certainly hope that in the book Raising Expectations and Raising Hell, I've tried to give some stories. It's really an organizing manual dressed up as a story, just as a clue. And the reason the book is titled Raising Expectations, I want to just wrap back to something that Ethel said, which is that we actually can win. And it's our job to re-raise workers' expectations that they can win, which is why the book is titled Raising Expectations. In this country, in my country, in this country, in Ireland when I visited Ireland, and everywhere I've ever been on planet Earth, there's an elite set of forces who rule government and rule corporations, and they are a revolving door right now, unfortunately. And every day when workers go to work, there's a message, which is you're stupid, basically. And in society, in the front page of every newspaper, there's an informal message that actually tries to convince people that we're not very smart. It's a daily message drummed out by neoliberalism. And our job is to re-raise workers' expectations that they and their families and communities deserve much more. We deserve the kind of society that we can have. We have to tax the rich people and corporations once again, which we somehow feel like we've just ceded the idea that austerity is real. If you haven't ever seen it, I want you to Google, in the state of California, California Proposition 30, because in 2012, in the biggest state in the United States, we passed a measure that was a small millionaire's tax, and it took the biggest state in the country from the biggest deficit, running the biggest austerity attack going. We were defunding schools, closing the postal service, cutting the whole state, and one small millionaire's tax that we took to the ballot, because we couldn't get it past the legislature, we pulled the entire state into a massive surplus with a 0.25% millionaire's tax. We have to build the power to tax the rich and tax the corporations and stop the discussion about austerity.